Okay, well. Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's Kai and today I have another fun nail design for you. It is this Cinnamoroll mermaid set. Probably one of the last few sets that are going to be like oceany summer themed. I know summer's technically over, but it is my favorite season and I love the ocean, I love the water. And so I thought I would do one last summer set before moving into spooky season and more fall themed designs. So this is what I came up with. It was largely centered around Crisania Neri's new clays that she just released. They are produced in Korea, and so I wanted to do something very 3D. I will walk you through the steps on how I made each element of this design, as well as show you my inspiration and my design process. If you like nail art tutorials, if you like nail hauls, that sort of thing, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much to those of you who are already subscribed. And without too much more chit chat, let's get into my design inspo. Okay, so this is my design. I am going to walk you through all of my inspiration, the products that I had planned on using, and all of that. But before that, shameless plug, I did make a bunch of templates just for myself to personally use while I'm designing nails, but I have uploaded them onto a Google Drive so that anyone can access the PNGs. So since it's a PNG, it is a blank background, so you just get like the black outlines. That way you can fill it in on your own with whatever drawing software that you would like to use. I am currently in Procreate. If it's interesting to you all, eventually I could do a little tutorial on how I do a nail design in Procreate. If that's something that you all would like to see, let me know down in the comments below. But yes, in the description will be the link to that Google Drive folder with all my nail templates. I apologize in advance, they're not like the cleanest. As you can see if you zoom in, the lines are like a little blurry, and that's because I hand drew everything. I eventually want to vectorize the designs, but I'm not there yet. Anyway, back to the actual design. My main inspirations were these two things right here. This design is the trending like Hello Kitty ear design. So it's where you do Hello Kitty on a French and then have her little ears coming out 3D using a 3D clay. I've also seen this one here from Shuni Nail, which is a little teddy bear that I thought was super adorable. And it's just a really trending look right now. And so I wanted to do my take on that with Cinnamoroll because, of course, I had to do Cinnamoroll. He's my favorite. And then I thought since Cinna was blue, I would do a sea-themed design, sort of like mermaid-inspired look. And these new products from Flower Nose were another big inspiration. I love the packaging on Flower Nose. I don't actually have any of their makeup. I haven't tried it. I just get so much inspiration from their packaging designs. They're just so ethereal and elegant and magical. And so I did want to pull in like the idea of taking the blues and the chromes and doing like iridescent aurora shiny seashells and things like that. So this was the other main inspiration. I also really love Ashop. I think it's Ashop or Ash OP nail, I don't know. But I love her work. She does amazing nail art. She does a lot of nail art actually on short nails, which I appreciate. It's not all just like super long extensions. And I absolutely love this design right here. It's this like chrome textured wave look, and so I wanted to replicate that. And then the other inspo was this design here from Amy's clients. I really like this kind of like circular abstract but organic looking design. Same with this one right here. These two were the ones that I wanted to kind of like combine into one for one of the nails. Okay, so here's my actual design with the notes. I wanted to do that little 3D Cinnamoroll on the thumbnail because I would have the most space to work with. Plan was to do like a 3D shell tip, French tip situation. I wanted to do like layered scales or shells here with the clear Cris clay. This one ends up shifting a little bit, changing a little bit, but I wanted to do it on a blue ombre background. For this nail, I wanted to mold a little cute mermaid Cinnamoroll and then do like an aura ombre and just include some little white shell details and whatnot here. I wanted the tail to be sparkly and then overlay it with the clear 3D clay. For this one, my thought was doing that like rippled water look where you take the clear clay and you cover the nail and then you indent it with like some sort of blunt tool, and it creates these really nice ripples. And it just creates these really nice ripples in the water. And then I wanted to use that Ageha white right here along the edge to create the crashing waves and then have the background be sand. I do end up switching this design. There's a lot actually that I end up switching out, and I'll talk about that in the design, the making of the design. And then this nail was the one that was going to be based off of this design here with a kind of like organic swirly shape and then some pearls and some other little charms. But I really wanted this to be very like blue, white, metallic looking, again to fit kind of the vibes of these products here. So that was my thought process going into it. Now, if you'll notice, I drew these out on an almond design, but I switched it to a coffin design, and here's why. So I did the coffin tips because if you notice, this design requires kind of a blunt curve to be the side of the character's head. You can't really do a deep curve on your French, otherwise it's going to stretch out the head in a weird way. So you have to go with this more blunt shape. And I just personally think the blunt edge of the coffin nail looks a lot better with this sort of curve on a French. If this were to be like an almond tip, I just personally feel like the blunt curve doesn't look as nice. It doesn't look as elegant. So yeah, that's why I stuck with the coffin tip. But yeah, that was my thought process behind this. Now I am recording this after the fact, so I did end up deviating a little bit from this design, changing some of the elements around as things either worked or didn't work. But I will say that I'm loving drawing out my designs. I used to do everything freestyle, and there are still designs that I do go in and just kind of like experiment with and play around and freestyle and don't really plan out. But for the more complex sets like this, where I know there are specific products that I want to try out, or if I have like a clear vision in my head, I am loving drawing out the design because it just means it saves me a lot of time in the creation process if I have a clear direction and some specific elements that I know I want to achieve. So yeah, let's go ahead and shift into the products that I used for this design. So as I mentioned, a big portion of this design is dedicated to these new clays from Crisania Neri, her Milky White and her 3D Clear. I'll be doing a full review throughout this video as I use them and play around with them. I also wanted to use the shade Atlantis from her Sea and Sky collection. I did do a full review of that one as well. This is a gorgeous color changing cat eye gel that is in this really pretty, like I would say true blue color. And then for a base color, I did use one of my favorite syrup whites, the Divock Milkis. And then I also found a place to use the Divock Sand color from the Once in a Summer Season 3 collection that I recently reviewed. For topper, I used one of my favorite thin consistency top coats, the Mayo Glass Top. And then I did use a special chrome. This is from Osh, and it is the Pearl Chrome. Unfortunately, it's not available in the US, so any Pearl Chrome that you have will do if you are trying to recreate any of this design. You'll also want to make sure that you have some little accents in silver. So these are a set of shell, sea-themed accents, and then just some caviar beads. And of course, it won't be an ocean look without pearls. And then you will want some sort of glue. I have a love-hate relationship with the Ivy Fix gel in a tube. I also tried out the Doughy Unsol gel for this design. It's like a metallic liner, so I'll give my full thoughts on that as well. And you will need some sort of textured chrome gel. This is important for one element of the design, that wave look. It should have this like very thick texture that's not going to budge when you apply it. You'll also want some sort of white textured gel that has a little bit of self-leveling to it. I actually go between the Cocoist Accessory Bond and the Ageha Cream White Gel for a couple different elements, but really you could use one of them. And then for tools, I do really recommend getting silicone sculpting tools if you really want to get into 3D. They're just so easy to use. You'll want a variety of brushes, namely some sort of liner brush. This one is the Sweetie Nail Supply Liner number 1. I'm also trying out a couple different brushes here. I recently ordered the blending brush from Crisania Neri, and look at how teeny tiny this 6mm liner is. Insane. I'm also trying a Gina brush. This is new to Sweetie Nail Supply, and it is like the perfect mini oval brush. I do have a Sweetie code. It is Get Pressed for 10% off. This is the MPA art palette, which I'll be using for one of the base colors. Surprisingly, with all of the polish I had, I did not have the perfect syrup blue, so I had to make it. But those are actually all of the supplies, and now we can finally get into the actual nail art tutorial. Okay, so the first thing I did was actually just unpack my new clays. Again, this is the clear and the milky white, her new formula made in Korea. So unlike her classic collection, which are some of my absolute favorites to sculpt with, those are more of a true clay consistency, whereas this has more of like a bouncy, rubbery texture. It still holds its shape very well. There is ever so slightly a bit of self-leveling, so I would argue it's best for more rounded shapes, but I had a super great time playing around with it for this design. Anyway, I have my tips all prepped. I'm actually using the soft gel standard stiletto extra long that I cut down to a coffin shape because I have a lot of trouble finding coffin tips that will really fit my curved nail beds. So these honestly were like the perfect medium between having nails that actually fit my nail bed, not being too long once I cut them down, and having a nice kind of like slim profile, not too much of a C curve, so big fan. The issue I run into with coffin tips is if I get the sculpted ones, they fit on my nail bed, but then they have a really strong C curve at the end, which is not my preferred look. I like more of a flatter look. But I'm starting with that Divock Milkis on the thumbnail, and I'm just laying out my French tip for the character head nail. Again, I took inspiration from that Shuni nail video where she did like the little 3D bear with the clear French tip, so I wanted to try that with Cinnamoroll. I did 2 coats of the Milkis color just to build up that base layer so that it's not too see-through. And here is my reminder to please make sure that if you are working with gel, that you do your research and you wear gloves if possible to avoid contact with uncured gel. That way we can avoid any potential allergies and continue to have fun with our DIY nails. Now I'm going in with that white crisp clay. As you can see, it's super non-sticky. It is not clumping up on my gloves or anything like that. Really bouncy, quite nice to work with. And I am just separating a piece into 2 even shapes by rolling it out and then splitting it in half. And these are going to be our Cinnamoroll ears. I'm just rolling them into a little like teardrop shape and then placing them on the nail. Once they're sort of stuck on the nail, they do come off pretty easily. If you decide you don't like the shape that you created, you can go back in and fix it. I really love that these clays are super workable. I never had an issue with them sticking whatsoever, which is awesome. Once I have the ears in the place that I wanted them, I did go in with her blending brush mixed with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to see if I could kind of like smooth out the edges. Gave that a cure, and then I coated everything with 2 layers of that Milkis, that syrup white. This just gives it that kind of like melty look where everything sort of blends together. Don't forget to cure between your coats and make sure that you're careful around that French. If you need to, you can always go in with a liner brush to clean up the French area. And now I'm going to be painting on his little face with this teeny tiny little 6mm liner brush. It is probably the thinnest that I own. So it was quite easy to achieve those super small details. The paint I'm using here is a custom mix from the MPA art palette. This face honestly took a while. I don't know what it is. The simplest faces, the ones that are like two dots and a little squiggle, can be the hardest to do. It can also help if you start with a dotting tool instead of using a brush for everything, but I was happy with how he looked in the end, aside from his ear. I thought the one on the right was a little bit too big, so I ended up clipping off the clay, filing down where it was attached, and just remaking that ear slightly smaller. Since this clay cures rock solid, it's really easy to like remove or cut off or file down if you do make a mistake. That way you can start over. So I did the same process again for the ear, applying it, shaping it, and then covering it with the syrup gel. This time though, I just went in with a liner brush in the syrup gel just to cover up that ear and any place where I filed down the color. And honestly, I don't think you can tell too much in the final product. Pretty happy with how it turned out. But I went ahead and gave him a full cure before moving on to the clear tip. Now, honestly, the step was probably unnecessary considering my end design. I thought I had wanted to do a cat eye French with this gorgeous metallic glitter cat eye flakes that Hope from Nails Box of Hope so kindly got for me in Japan from Osh. So yeah, I just mixed it with a little bit of clear base and then I painted it on the tip of the nail before magnetizing it in a French design. It is pretty here. I really like this powder that you can mix in to any polish. However, it does become slightly unnecessary with how this design ends up, but that's okay. It's all about experimenting. So I went ahead and cured that, and the base is done for the thumbnail. For the rest of the nails, I wanted a syrup color that would really match the blue from Atlantis. This really pretty, like true jean blue almost is what I am reminded of. However, I didn't have a syrup color that matched this. You would think that with all of the polishes that I've so gratefully collected that I would have one, but I didn't. So I went in with my MPA art palette and I started mixing together blues. It was still looking a little bit too vibrant. So if you ever want to mute out your colors, make it a little bit less vibrant, you want to take a color that is opposite on the color wheel. So in this case, the opposite of blue is orange, and I just mixed in a little teeny tiny bit of that along with a small amount of gray, and it just muted that blue super nicely, and I think I got decently close to the base of Atlantis. It was a little hard to tell because Atlantis has those silver flakes, but I went ahead and mixed my custom color in just with some clear base gel, and I have a nice syrup blue to work with. So once I custom mixed my colors, I used it to ombre a couple nails. So on the pointer finger, I did an ombre from blue at the base of the nail to clear at the tip. And then I just used my Nail Bio ombre brush. This one is one of my favorites for doing like these vertical ombres. It just has really nice bristles that don't get clumped up so you can get a good blend. And I ombre out the edge. I do this in 2 layers so that I get nice color payoff. When I blend, I kind of go in a crisscross direction, so I'll go straight and then diagonally across that blended area just to really smooth things out. And then after curing that, I went in with the Crisania blue mag gel, and I also ombreed that out just over where I had that base color laid down. This color is really gorgeous on its own, but I did want a little bit of a more opaque base for the set. And now I'm just magnetizing this in the spotlight effect. So you bring the particles to the surface and then circle a rod magnet around the center to create that like chasing light effect. And I gave that a cure. Moving on to the middle finger, we're just going to do 2 layers of Milkis, carrying in between 2 even layers. I do like Milkis because I think it has a really nice even color payoff. It does lean slightly more on the warm tone of white. It's not like a cool tone stark white. Once that base layer is down, I'm actually just taking that custom color from earlier, the gel that we hadn't mixed in with the clear, and I took one of the Diami mushroom sponges and just did an aura ombre in the center. I love these round sponges. I think they make auras so easy because you don't have to worry about the square shape being uneven and creating like harsh edges. They're just super nice and handy to use. I do this in 3 layers, by the way, curing in between. With that nail done, we're moving on to the ring finger where I'll be doing that wave design. So I just kind of like went in with that syrup gel and created an uneven edge towards the cuticle area. This can be really messy because you are going to cover that area with a white texture gel anyway, so you don't have to be super precise. And it's water, so it's okay if it looks a little bit organic. I did 2 layers there as well. After curing the second layer, then I went in with Divock Sandy Beach. This is from the Once in a Summer Season 3 collection that I just reviewed. It is definitely my favorite Divock Once in a Summer collection. I actually didn't really love this polish initially, but I found a place to use it and I do really like how it looks for this specific design, so I think it's kind of growing on me. I laid down 2 layers here, just covering the empty spots on the nail. You don't have to be super precise because again, you're going to be covering that place where it joins anyway. Once I cured those 2 layers, I went in with that mag gel and just did the same spotlight effect. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect because we are going to be covering it with some textured chrome, but I gave that a cure and moved on to the base painting of the pinky finger. This time I'm doing the ombre up towards the nail bed area. Same process though. I did 2 layers of our custom mixed color, blending out each one and curing in between. This time though, instead of limiting the cat eye to just that painted area, I did cover the entire nail and then did the velvet effect. And once I was happy with that pattern, I popped it in my light and the base colors are done. Now we can move on to the really fun part, the 3D. So this is definitely the most time-consuming part of this process. I hand sculpted entirely a little mini Cinnamoroll mermaid. Since I'm using Chris's products, I thought I would try a little mini sculpted figure. This is definitely the smallest character I've attempted to date. If you haven't checked out Crisania's Instagram, she is an amazing nail artist. She does great 3D work, especially her little mini figures. They're so adorable, and this was so difficult, so I appreciate her work even more now having tried to do a mini character. But I'm starting with the head, and you can kind of think of it as like a rounded trapezoid where the place his ears attached are kind of flattened. And then I'm rolling out 2 tiny teardrop shapes with this chisel sculpting tool from Crisania. These will be his little ears. Sculpting used to be really daunting when I first got into it, but once I kind of thought about shapes as individual pieces rather than an entire shape, it became easier. So if you think about Cinnamoroll as like a rounded trapezoid head and then his ears as separate little teardrops, it just makes it more manageable and easier to sculpt in my opinion. Now, does that mean it's easy in general? No, because I redid his one little floppy ear, I think 5 times. This is attempt number 2, no-go. Attempt number 3, also a no-go. Attempt number 4, didn't like that one either. Attempt number 5, not much better. Finally, I got it on 6 because I made the attachment point a little bit thicker, so it looked better. I went ahead and cured that. The nice thing about these clays is that they do blend together well even if they're cured. So he was missing a little bit of volume on that ear. I just added a teeny tiny little bit more, blended it together, cured it, and now we're on to the body. And at this point I was feeling good until my power started flickering. I live in Florida, so we get storms, especially around this time. I pushed through though, and I made his little arms. I was pretty happy with the shape. I did mean to go back and blend those shapes together, the arms and the neck and body. However, Haley. Okay, well, That's unfortunate. So yeah, I lost power for a while, took about an hour, but it did end up coming back on. At that point though, I had forgotten what I was in the middle of doing, so I cured it and then I moved on to the tail. So this is a clear. Don't do what I did here. It had like a little layer over it that was attached to the lid and I just pushed it down. I would probably peel that layer back just because when I pushed it down, I created a bunch of little air bubbles. So that's user error. But this clay is so clear. It's so nice to work with because even though it's like that nice gummy texture, it was not sticking whatsoever. My hands tend to get kind of warm when I'm working, and no matter how much I rubbed it, it was not sticking at all, which was amazing. So once I was done testing out the stickiness, I just rolled some out into another kind of teardrop shape. This is going to be our little mermaid tail. I flattened out the rounded edge and then attached that to his torso and then sculpted the tail into a kind of like curved shape. You can almost think of it like an upside down Santa hat. I had a little bit too much product. I wanted him to have like a really short, chubby tail. So I did remove some product, continued to shape it until I was happy. And once I did go ahead and cure his tail. So far so good. I was pretty proud of this at this point, and now I just need to do the fins on the tail. So here I'm making more teardrop-esque shapes, almost, but it's pointed on both sides, so it's almost like a yam, I guess. And I'm just flattening that out after attaching it at the end of the tail, and those are going to be his little fins. I love that you can see just how much light is refracting off of the clay. It just shows you how clear it is. Anyway, I'm just shaping those tail fins to a nice point, flattening them out as I see fit, and then I gave it a full cure. To kind of cover that area where his torso meets the fin, I made two really small, really skinny teardrop shapes and joined them in the center, almost like a little skinny bow, but more so emulating the classic Disney mermaid Ariel and how her tail kind of has this like little, I don't know, frill to it. Whatever it is, I thought it looked good. I just flattened out those shapes and gave everything one last cure before moving on to chrome. So the Cris clay does not cure non-white per se, but it is smooth enough where you can add some chrome accents. It's not going to be like that super smooth chrome that you get on top of a top coat, but it will take the chrome and it will have it stick and you'll get a nice shiny surface. I would just recommend doing this over more smooth shapes. If you have a shape that's super textured, it's not going to take the chrome as well. But for smooth surfaces, it works very well. A silicone tool can help buff in any remaining dust, and he's looking good. So I did peel him off of this little palette because I wanted his tail to be color changing. So I took that color changing cat eye gel from earlier and I just dabbed some on the back side of the tail, went in with my liner brush and spread that color out evenly over the surface. I did a pretty thick layer of this so that the color would really shine through and we'd get a really nice color changing effect. Once I painted the entire tail, I took him with a pair of tweezers and I demagnetized the polish so that we just get the color, then gave him a full cure, and he's looking very cute. I decided to move on to the next nail, so this is going to be the 3D shell nail. Originally, I wanted to do like layered shells. I had done this before in a design with scales, so I cut apart a bunch of similar sized bits of that clear clay. I made one shell and I decided I didn't want to cover the whole nail with shells. I just wanted a couple. So I made a second one and unfortunately I was out of frame for a bit of this process. So I do apologize, but basically you want to sharpen one side of that circle and make it almost like the edge of a square. And then you go in with a flat chisel silicone tool, something that is going to be flat and skinny, and you're going to create those ridges. I'd recommend starting in the middle. Once you've placed your ridges, you can go in and define the edge and give it that nice scalloped look by just pushing that silicone tool up towards where you made those ridges. The nice thing about this clay is that it is super thick and bouncy, so you can work with it for a really long time without it moving much. It will self-level just ever so slightly, but not enough to where you lose a lot of the shape. So I did give that a cure, and then I decided I didn't want 2 shells. I wanted to do a sand dollar. So I put on a little disc of the clear clay, and then I just took my pointed tweezers and I tried to emulate the sand dollar pattern. I'll try to remember to put like a picture in the corner of what I'm referencing. Again, apologies for being off frame. I'm working on it. Sometimes I just get so caught up in what I'm doing though that I migrate a little bit. Anyway, cured that, and this was the perfect surface for chrome because adding the chrome really just defines that pattern that we created. And since this is a smoother shape, the chrome went on perfectly. But once I was finished buffing that in, I wiped away the excess and moved on to the textured ring finger. So for this, I thought this Gina brush would be perfect. Again, it is the round brush. And for that textured wave look, I'm using my Jello Jello Edge Gel, my tried and true for textured chrome. I'm just going in and doing like little curved swirls over the blue portion of the nail, alternating the direction, overlapping in some areas so that you get a nice like organic flowy looking pattern. Even if you don't have the Gina brush, you will want to use some sort of oval brush to have the nice like rounded shape that you need for this design. Once I was happy with all of the texture, I did go ahead and cure, and then I used the same chrome powder from before and just covered the entire surface. And this just brought all of that gorgeous texture to the forefront of the nail. I love textured chrome so much. I just think it looks so cool. And then to create the like foamy wave look, the white caps, I'm using the Ageha cream gel. Again, Hope got me this from Japan. I'm not sure if you can source it somewhere in the US. I will try to double check, but I'm using that same round brush and just creating like that textured wave look. You can lay on the product pretty thick here. I actually end up doing one coat, curing it, and then going in with the extra product for even more of a 3D effect. So far, I'm really loving this brush. It has enough structure to maintain that rounded shape, but it's not too hard where it's like pushing the gel around. It really nicely floats it over the surface, but it very well mimics like traditional paints, which is what Gina is known for, is creating nail art that looks like traditional art. I'll try to remember to link her IG below, but I'm very happy with that recent purchase, and that nail is finished for now. So we're gonna move on to finally applying all of our charms. I dug out what felt like my entire collection of charms just to see if I could find some fun sea-themed designs. I did find a couple of starfish, and to match the kind of like cutesy coquette vibe of the flower nose collection, I also grabbed some bows. Starting with the thumbnail, I wanted to add some like little white seashells and sea stars, so I went in with the Cocoas Non-Wipe. It's another sort of like 3D gel, and I just painted on a little shell, a little sea star, and a couple of white dots. And then I used the Jinbei Ivy Fix Gel in the tube, and I added a little sea star as kind of like a bow replacement on Cinnamoroll's head. And then I filled in the space where there weren't those little white designs with some other silver charms to create almost like, oh, what is it called? It's not a junk nail. It's where you have like a fully blinged out nail. I guess that's what it is. It's a bling nail. But I basically covered all of the empty spots with some pearls and all sorts of different teeny tiny little silver charms, and I think it came out really cute. But that's also the reason I don't think I needed the sparkly background. Probably could have done without, but you live and you learn. So on to the pointer finger, I just wanted to add a couple little accent charms here. So I added a couple pearls, some little silver caviar beads, and then a big sea star just to fill up a little bit of that empty space and add some shine to the snail. For extra shine, I thought it would be fun to chromify the shell that I made. So I did go in with that Inspo gel. This is my first time using it, so it did take some experimenting, but I just took a liner brush and painted over the shell. It looked super glossy when I first put it on. After I cured it, there was some texture, so I'm going to have to experiment with it a little bit. I think what happened was I had a little bit too much in some areas, so it didn't cure smoothly. I did some experiments afterward with thinner layers and it worked really well. I will say I tried a couple different top coats. I will list them out here. The doughy top coat did actually work best with this, which makes sense. It's the same brand. Some of the other top coats did slightly dull to polish, so I'm excited to experiment with it a little bit more. But onto the middle finger, I started by base coating just so that I could have a slightly tacky surface to work on. And because I made that charm flat, I decided to take some clear clay and flatten it over the surface of the nail and then push that charm into the uncured gel. This did two things. It allowed me to kind of like fill in some of the gaps underneath that flat charm. And I also wanted to do the cool like textured water look. You'll see what I mean in a second, but I gave Cinnamoroll a little silver shell to hold, and then I went in with the blunt end of a brush and just started molding that clear clay into that wave pattern. For the areas that were too big, I went in with a silicone tool and again just started adding little ridges and little divots, and it perfectly emulated that like glossy water look with the light streaking through it. Before curing, I added a couple of pearls, a couple of caviar beads, and I really love this effect, and I love that it served two purposes. One, it gave me the artistic effect that I wanted, and two, it made that flat charm not stick up from the nail so much so it won't get snagged on anything. Since I've already spent so long doing a lot of hand-painted things, I pulled out some really pretty seashell stickers that I had, and I just did the little white details with those. That saved me a lot of time. These stickers I will try to find. I think I got them from like Temu a year ago, so I'm not sure I'll be able to. But you could also just hand draw these little designs. And I'll be honest, I was procrastinating on the next step, which is finally drawing in Cinnamoroll's face, but I used that super small liner from Crisania, which made it a lot easier, and I very carefully, with my shaky hands, because at this point it was like 2 in the morning and I was tired, but I did manage to draw his face, and I think I got this on the first try. I was very proud of myself. Usually it takes me 3 or 4 tries. At this point though, after curing the face, I realized that I forgot to blend together the head and neck and the arms and the body with the whole power outage fiasco that happened. So I just added a little clay and did that. And we're on to our second to last nail. Here I just wanted a couple little silver accents. So I ended up going with the bow to tie in that ocean coquette look. I painted over this bow with that silver Inspo gel just because it had started tarnishing slightly, so I thought this would be a good way of saving it. Gave that a cure, and we're finally on to the pinky finger. So I'm using the Cocoist accessory bond. I wanted to use that one because it is non-wipe, whereas the cream gel, I don't remember if it's non-wipe. I think it had a little bit of a tacky layer. And I'm just creating some like globby organic swirls. And before curing that, I embedded a couple little charms into the gel. Then I did go ahead and cure it and went back in to glue on a couple more charms, some pearls, some more caviar beads, just a few here and there to just add a little something to this nail. Even though this is probably the simplest nail, I actually think this might be one of my favorites aside from the Cinnamoroll mermaid. I just really like how it came out. So after gluing on the charms, I did go in with a layer of top coat just to seal in all of those embeds, those accents. And then I decided my swirls weren't swirly enough, so I went in with more of that accessory bond and just made those a little bit more 3D. The nice thing about the accessory bond is that it is non-wipe, so it can be a finishing touch. I don't have to go over this and top coat it anymore. And that is that nail finished. And our final detail, it wouldn't be Cinnamoroll without his little blushy cheeks. So I'm just using this syrup pink that I have from the Mayo Peach collection and just doing his little blushies on both the character nails. This is easy. If you have a dotting tool, that probably works best. I was lazy. I just used the brush that I had on hand. But finally, we're on to top coat. I know this was a long one. Can you believe that when I went into this, I said I was going to do a simple design? A lot of people gave me feedback on my last video, which I really appreciate, asking for some more beginner-friendly designs. Believe it or not, when I went into this, I was meaning for this to be one of them with like lots of charms and stickers. It quickly got out of hand. But I think that was good because I actually very much enjoyed creating the set. I got to experiment with a lot of new techniques, new to me, and so I had a lot of fun making it, which ultimately is my goal with these designs with my channel. So I will try to get to some more simple sets, I promise, but I am very pleased with how this one turned out, and I hope you all enjoyed as well. I hope you were able to maybe learn something. Speaking of which, to preserve texture, you can sponge away a little bit of top coat before you cure. And that is the finished design. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm super pleased with how it turned out. This is one of those rare moments where the vision I had in my head just translated really well, and I think part of it had to do with the fact that the products were all really easy to use. They will be listed below. If you're in the market for 3D clays, or if you liked anything from Sweetie Nail Supply, I do have that code for 10% off. Here's the reveal of the little color changing mermaid tail. Definitely my favorite part of the set. In warm temperatures, his tail goes from blue to really gorgeous silver color. I just think special effects gels are so fun to play around with. Anyways, I really thank you guys for being here, for watching. Hopefully you like the new uploads on Fridays. I might switch to Thursdays. Let me know which one you prefer. I do have a Discord linked in the description if you'd like to check that out. But I hope you are having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I will see you all next time. Bye. Smog. Those aren't your flowers, Bug. Those are yours. What are we doing? I'm trying to film, buddy. You're too cute for your own good. Okay, off the table. Okay.